Good morning. Sorry about the slow start here, but Jyunmi and I are scrambling to catch up. It is September 19th, Friday, and every other Friday or so, we do a show where we have kind of open game on what stories we find interesting and important to our audience. And so that's what we call our fave stories, I suppose. And so I'm going to start off with a story Jyunmi, unless you have something you have pressing on your mind, but I'm going
No,
to
go
start
for
off with a story that's connected to what's happened over the last couple of days with Meta. And, that was the big sort of collective AI conference that was hosted by Zuckerberg himself. I didn't get a chance to listen to the keynote that he broadcast, but that ZuckerCon, was really focused on the Ray-Ban Meta display glasses. And unfortunately, during the demo, and I didn't get to see it, it failed. They flubbed the demo live, and so that was pretty embarrassing. And of course, they'll fix that over time. But basically, that doesn't remove the important news that there is a very broad push by Meta and other companies to provide wearables that include AI and displays for you, along with audio in the frames, so that you have constant access to an AI companion. So anyway, that I just wanted to point out that it's early stage, and they messed it up. Uh, I almost am curious to see if it's worth finding some clips about how that demo failed and go back and look at them. But that's pure curiosity, because I think the Meta display glasses and other display glasses like the Halliday glasses that are reputedly being distributed to customers, but I haven't gotten mine yet, even though they were supposed to arrive in April or May sometime in then. But it's I haven't gotten any communication from them. Maybe it's gone dark. I'm not sure. But anyway, glasses and AI companions, big story. Meta flubbed their latest release on live demo. But another important point about Meta is that the lead for AI in that space, in the glasses space, just left Meta. I'm sorry, in their AI computing, AI robotics space. Meta is also, has a team that's working on AI robotics, and the lead for that left to left wait, I'm getting it backwards. Somebody left. Oh yeah, somebody left Optimus. The lead for robotics at Tesla's Optimus left Tesla. I just read this morning, which is why I'm so flummoxed by it. They left and they're joining Meta. So that means that Meta is moving forward with robotics as one of their planks in the world of AI. All right, so that's an opener. Jyunmi, take it away. Help me out here. I've got several more major stories that I want to talk about, but that was my short take one.
Gotcha. And Beth's been able to join us now. Hello, Beth. Well, I wanted to comment on that Meta move, because this is the first time you just said this news just you read it this morning. This is the first time I'm hearing about it too. That someone from Optimus or Tesla's Optimus program is moving over, which furthers their trend of just spreading the money around to try and entice more and more talent.
Yeah, it's poaching. They're poaching big time.
You're right. Exactly. And I've been hearing that they also have like really strict like turnarounds, like we need your answer in 24 hours, and and that kind of thing. And what might explain why some people had change of hearts and is going back to where they were coming from. So lots of drama in the talent space, because there's only so much right now, right? Now that it's popular, we're probably going to see a huge influx of people going into AI engineering and development and research and things like that. But there's only so much. The talent pool is only so deep for long-term experienced or senior personnel in that space. For me, I'll transition to the story that kind of covered quite a bit on Wednesday. There's even stuff I didn't mention that happened made on YouTube event that didn't even get to on that, which is more AI focused, because we talked about how YouTube is promoting their shorts, and now you're going to get a lot of AI in this Ask Studio, which I think is probably the best highlight for any YouTube focused creator, because they can now ask a lot of insights based on their own content using that framework that YouTube has built with Ask Studio. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about regarding YouTube was something that I think is going to affect us directly, is that for lives, right? YouTube Lives is we can now, or we will, as they roll it out, be able to stream in multiple formats, both horizontal and vertical formats. So it can be streamed live to YouTube Shorts. So if anyone who likes our shorts but hasn't seen the live show, will be able to stream to the YouTube Shorts platform live as well at the same time, simultaneous streaming. That's interesting from a production standpoint. And
Well,
then,
given that our show is not short, how does that?
I know. I'm like,
well, it's just like chasing TikTok, right? TikTok offers live streaming as well if you hit certain thresholds. But what this will allow is anyone who can go to YouTube Live also stream in the 9:16 format to specifically the YouTube Shorts.
It's a different
channel.
It's a different aspect ratio for a YouTube that you look at in the browser or on the phone, and a short, which is more like the TikTok vertical.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So
okay. Does that mean that the camera shifts, or are we just like, you're gonna
well,
get
we're gonna find out as soon as we get it. Some of the things that they showed were top and bottom sequences, but our show is always just outside the format of whatever platform that we're on, right? So how is it going to handle 4 or 5 or 6 people on screen at once? I would guess that it's just going to be a truncated. You're going to have your 9:16, but you're just going to have everything shrunk down. We'll see how it actually works out. But the other interesting aspect of this is that YouTube will be enabling AI-enabled highlights from those lives. So we can create additional shorts from that live. So we'll see how that all works out. Again, this is all YouTube rolling it out to its creator partners over time. Not exactly sure when we're going to see it, but some interesting plays from YouTube and Google as a whole, trying to grab more of the live streaming market share from TikTok and other places. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today. Beth, do you got something?
Yeah, I went back and watched the longer, it's about a 20-minute video of the Axios CEO interviewing Dario Amodei and Jack Clark, I believe are their names. at the AI summit, the Axios AI summit from DC yesterday. And there are some juicy tidbits that are making the rounds on X. I don't know if either of you have seen, or any of you have seen them. But he, at the very beginning of the interview, the Axios CEO introduces it as like, "Hey, so we've been having." You have confused faces. Can you hear me? Good. The Axios CEO introduced it by saying, "We've been having these conversations off air, right? Not offline, off the record." And Dario has agreed now to go on the record as someone who is saying these things. And what he was saying is, based on what's happening inside Anthropic and the conversations that they're having, they think a serious white collar job, like 10 to 20% unemployment in those sectors potential in the next 1 to 5 years. And he feels that people are not paying enough attention to it. And that is, and then they go on to a longer conversation about it. I would be sharing the video, but I tanked my entire system when I tried to do that before the show, so I will share the link. But essentially, one of the sort of points in that discussion was, because he's sure that it's happening in Anthropic, and he's sure that this kind of model is happening outside Anthropic in the other companies as well, that when that's somebody whose job was coding 24 hours, when someone whose job was coding 100% of the time is now not coding 100% of the time. They're supervising AIs that are coding, right? Like their job is shifting and they are retraining within house as capabilities increase. That was one of the things that they're saying. And because of that, because of seeing how much is able to get done by the capabilities of the AIs that they're developing, they're just watching that as likely to be things that happen outside these models as well, outside the research, the frontier companies. And so like he's sort of sounding the alarm. He's saying out loud what other people have been like, hey, this, if you put 1 and 2 together, it comes to 3. Like, can we talk about what it feels like to live in the 3 world? And so that just happened. That streamed yesterday, I think, or maybe the day before. So that's like slowly rolling out and having a conversation. So I think that whole video is interesting, but I'm curious. We have been talking about job impact, but I'm curious what you all feel in terms of, like, does it make a difference if it's on the record and it's one of the big frontier model companies? Like, will this make an impact outside the hype? Dario Amodei admitted the sky was falling.
I think from definitely from a journalistic standpoint, that saying it on the record means this is what you intended to say. This isn't some side conversation where you're speculating. This is more of a statement than anything else. And and it's not anything that he hasn't really done in the past, like when he talked about he foresees that nearly all the coding is going to be done by AI in the future, and those kinds of statements. Now, while this is definitely sobering to hear, I think it'll really take off when there's confirmation from other leaders in the space, when they say, yes, we agree with Amodei. And so that I think is that other shoe. And if and when we hear that, I think that'll be the confirmation for a lot of people. Now, already a ton of people believe this
Right.
line of thought already, right? This is enough confirmation for them. So we'll probably hear more and more from those speaking from that position. I mean, we've talked, like you said, we've talked about job impact and workforce impact and things like that. Really comes down to, again, how businesses want to approach it, whether they're simply going to try and lower headcount or gain long-term benefits off of retraining, repositioning, expanding in different directions, those kinds of things. So we'll see how it plays out.
They also spoke a little bit about the hype versus predictable trajectory. So one of the things that he was saying was that if you plot the way that they plot the capability of AI, the way that capabilities are growing, right? The things that it can do as you generate new models, and their revenue, their company revenue, they just came out with another valuation. That is like a plottable, predictable curve. The curve, I'm going straight up. It's a straight line. It's not a curve. It has not curved yet, but it is predictably plottable. And how that compares to, GPT-5 was disappointing, right? It's AI is the hype cycle, and it's not as good anymore. And he was asked to speak to that too. And what he referenced was his very predictable, these are the things that are happening, but that the hype cycle creates this sort of variation of it's going to be amazing, and then it's disappointing, and then it's going to be amazing, and then it's going to be disappointing. And that in that, if you plotted the center of those, you're probably seeing a similar kind of increase. But if you're on that ride, you are potentially thinking that it's unstable and not actually moving. And at the very end, Jack Clark actually talked about that people just get used to it, right? So like, why, what are people gonna feel in, I don't remember the timeline, like in a year or 2 years, what's gonna be happening then? And he was like, people get used to things. So you're like, it's not that big a deal. He's like, you have a tutor in your pocket that can teach you anything in the world in most languages, right? People are like, yeah, like that's remarkable. That was not possible previous, and it is possible now. So we get used to things. But the fact that he came and said things out loud, I think are on record is a key point.
Yeah.
Thoughts? And he also had a little piece of engineers not being able to solve something, so they gave it, and he explained, when you're training a model, it's across multiple clusters, and there's all this stuff. But he said, so we couldn't solve it. The engineer worked for a really long time. He quantified the really long time. I just don't remember the details. So they gave it to Claude, and Claude said, do this. So he referenced it, that it's not a closed loop yet, but Claude is definitely solving problems about the next versions of Claude. Like, it is definitely one of the cooks in the kitchen. And often the cook, apparently, that you ask when you can't figure something out.
Which is exciting and terrifying at the same time, because it portends this time when the AI itself will have super intelligence about itself and the ability to make modifications to itself, even if it's controlled and like gated by human masters. It will rapidly exceed the capabilities of even the very best coders. And there's some news just this week about how one of the models, I think, I'm not going to say which one, but the big players there are Claude Code and Codex. Those two seem to be vying for this primacy in the world of coding expertise. And one of them just beat, a vast number of engineering students doing active coding. But the one AI, while all those others were attempting to solve the same problem, the one AI, just sped by them and solved all the problems. So, we're really on the cusp of when the AI is going to exceed human capabilities. And that has a lot of transformational impact. And I believe, and I don't know, I've been a bit of a doomer, if you will, on this front. I believe that there are radical disruptions to the economy of human work output being paid for by organizations. That's something has to change there, because I think that AI systems will dramatically reduce the number of humans that are necessary for almost anything in the next decade. But very soon in the coding world, the junior coders who are coming into the space, unless they demonstrate extraordinary capabilities that are like at the top level of the engineering talent pool, there's just not a lot of room for people doing the rote things. And I think about this in my mind as comparable to, the advent of the printing press and then the progression of printing to eventual computer printing and so on, that got rid of all of the scribes that had to write down, what was being said and then actually copy those. They monks in monasteries would be sitting there for most of their lifetime writing those things. Well, those humans were supported for that purpose in that time. Similarly, in the age that I lived through, humans were supported by the need for humans to develop the productivity for the enterprises that generate the goods and services that are our economy. That's going to be substantially automated in the future, and that's a really big issue.
One thing that I want to, we've been telling our clients for a while now is, I think and we've been adding it to our strategy and discovery reports, is we've got to stop thinking of just adding AI to processes that are built for humans. So really trying to get our clients to think about, could you redefine not just your process, but like, how will you deploy your people if they don't have to do the stupid things that you make them do? Like, we're pretty honest about it, because it's like, and then we point out things that you're like, you're not paying whoever to do this, right? You're not paying this person to go search this or do this or do consolidation. It's not I think like we're limited because it's a process that you have to do this, to get this done. But it's not really deploying them in a really useful manner. It's just mundane work that they have to do. And most of that, I would say 60-70% of certain people's jobs are that. So it's like, what would happen if you can redeploy whoever, Ginny, you can redeploy Jillian, you can redeploy Tom to do different things that are way better than what they're capable of. So that's really, to me, that's our message to our team, is like, this isn't about headcount reduction. It's really, you have to really think, can your business now think of new ways to do things to grow your share with the people you have? We're not saying you need to hire more people, but it's like, is it now about deployment? And also at the same time too, to me, I think some people in Silicon Valley are pretty short-sighted about, hey, these will affect all these jobs. So I'm like, yeah, these are tech jobs. But like, I run into company after company, I'm like, you're not getting rid of anybody, because one, like, you barely use AI. Two, there's no imperative to. It's not even a line item on your budget. And even if I look at your industry, yeah, people are using ChatGPT. Yeah, people are using certain things, but it's like, it's just make them nominally 15-20% better. It's not like, hey, we're redefining our entire systems because of it. So, yes, while there is an imperative that we should, what's saving people and jobs right now in the industries that we deal with is literally the slow moving, like very slow change management process, behaviors that have been entrenched, company processes that have been entrenched. And like we're having difficult time breaking that. And these are with companies that are excited about it. There's a whole whackload of companies that are really, really even slower, not even doing anything related to AI. So I think like, yes, in certain industries, and the question has always been, hey, the focus has been coding, and but like, yeah, for software engineers, I'm like, okay, but let's take land development, let's take this, let's take home building, let's take manufacturing, let's take construction. You may get pieces of news that you're like, yeah, we're replacing this thing, but not really. When we go into company after company, it's like people are using it. The managers and the leaders know that they should be more efficient. And yes, they could, when they talk about that, they bring up headcount, but there's no way in their next annual budget or their next 2 annual budgets that they're even looking at that reduction, because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know about automation. They don't know about all the things that you could potentially do with it. So they haven't connected the dots yet. It's like, yeah, when they connect the dots, but even if they connect the dots, they have to be willing to take the risk to, hey, we have to disrupt our current business operation to do this, to do this, to do this. And even that, when we say, yes, disrupt it, but you actually don't right now need to let anyone go or reduce your headcount, because you can redeploy people in a different way. And you got to rethink some of these issues. So like, I think when I hear that, I was like, okay, that's cool, but we haven't seen that on ground.
I think the reason you're not seeing it on the ground is that you're working in the small to medium-sized business environment, and that's not where it's going to show up first. Like the transformation, the big layoffs that you see are in the urban skyscrapers, where like at the Salesforce Tower, they dropped 5,000 employees because no longer does Benioff want to, countenance the idea of having to pay people for the work that can be done substantially with automation using the tools that even Salesforce itself provides. So there you have this sort of example, the icebreaker for this employment transformation. But if you go down to the smaller, all the way to the rural scale, that's not going to really have, AI is not going to have a huge impact back there. And in the small companies, it's the switching costs to move to AI are substantial compared to the immediate benefits, and there's risk involved with it as well. And so I think that's why you see a lot of reticence about it. And I believe that where the big impact's going to be is in the cities, where people have concentrated and they have been doing kind of mundane things in office towers that can now be supplanted by all of that. And there are spaces like the construction trades where you need monkey fingers, Karl, to borrow your term for about that, to swing the hammers. And there are potential automations for mass manufacturing of domiciles and so on. But the reality is that we're going to have stick-built construction for a long time. And it's just the most direct and easy way. And it's instilled in our whole sort of regulatory process to get permits for an automated construction operation in a municipality. It's probably much more difficult than getting a permit for a general contractor to do a construction project. And so they might have some back end administrative advantages from AI, but there's a lot of employment that's going to be happening in the local physical environment that's going to be sustainable for humans. But it's not enough, because now we've concentrated all our people in these cities to support these enterprises that are in the office towers, and those have to somehow be spread out again or supported in the places where they are. Okay.
I don't so one thing I just want to on that is that and maybe it's the city I live in, because our city isn't like, we have tech companies, but the driver here is energy and oil and gas. And that's the only,
that's Calgary for people who don't know.
Yeah. And generally Alberta too. So it's just interesting that, like, when I hear that, and then when I work with companies like, our target is medium, but we end up with enterprise oil and gas, enterprise like land development and so on. I guess it's like industry by industry, but that's why I was like, we don't see that. And maybe it's coming later than now, but it's like, when I hear the layoffs and stuff, it's like, it's a lot of it, a little bit of finance, but a whole whackload in tech. But that's just one part, right? And then when I look at, isn't it, I don't know, like, and doesn't, like, in North America, doesn't medium and SMB represent 99% versus enterprise representing only 1%? Because I know in Canada, small, medium represent, like, small business obviously represent 91, 98, I think. That was last time I remember. And like medium 1.5, enterprise is like even smaller. So it's like that big piece of where, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, that's where the chunk, I think, until you start seeing it there, the enterprise can, the disruptions with the amount of people with jobs and whatnot. But I'm like, the thing is that I don't see it. I hear the news, but I don't feel it or hear it on ground. I don't like it. There's a dichotomy between what we're feeling, what we're hearing on ground. This is versus the news. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's a very interesting.
I also, just to close this out, I also think that the oil and gas industry is a fossil, right? And it has no need, because of the short future duration of it in the long-term view. It doesn't need to make any changes. It's being supported by governments. It's being advantaged over more high-tech, pursuits of energy production. And so there's an inertia there in the oil and gas industry that makes it so that they have superior profitability, because it's an extraction economy, and they don't really need to, wring a little bit extra profit out of it for the short term, because they're looking out 10 years and I don't know what their future looks like out there, because there's going to be the expiration of the availability of the limited resources for extraction. So I think it's like a passing thing. I'm taking the very long view here. So anyway, I want to move on, if I may, to another more directly AI related thing, which is I'm going to talk a little bit now about Google. So the first thing I wanted to say is that Google, just in the past few days, has announced and is beginning to roll out. It's not available to everybody yet, but it's rolling out. They're adding Gemini to Chrome, and so I want to put this in the context of the AI-enabled browsers like Comet and the agent capabilities. Most of the major players out there want to have a browser-based agentic AI included, so that you can basically be operating on the web with an AI assistant built into the browser interface for that. And Chrome, of course, is the largest purveyor of browsers out there. And most people on the planet are using Chrome. So I don't know if that's true in China. Maybe China, by virtue of this enormous population and maybe a Chinese browser, I may not have the right data there. But at least in the English-speaking countries of the world, I think it's pretty true that Chrome has a commanding lead. And now they're adding Gemini into Chrome. There'll be a sidebar, and you'll be able to delegate tasks to the agent, the agentic Gemini there in the sidebar, to take actions for you, to automate certain things that you might do, including up to and including now making purchases on your behalf. Because Google also launched the Agent Payments Protocol, AP2, which is an open protocol for secure initiation and transactions for agent-led payments across platforms. Okay, so Google is setting a standard out there for that. Remember, just a few weeks ago, Karl, you introduced a video from the CEO of Visa announcing their new, protocols for how you will use your Visa cards with agents on the web. So privacy protections, control, intervention by the user, not free flowing use of your Visa card. But now what you're going to see is you're going to be able to, as Chrome does today for me, Chrome's managing all my passwords. It has all my credit cards, right? When I'm on my desktop, I don't ever pull out my wallet and my credit cards. It has all of that information, including the CVC codes, which I then have to provide a password to just add that one last step. But now when you add Agent Payments Protocol and add that to Chrome, and Chrome with Gemini with automations and AI assistance, I can delegate tasks just by owning the Chrome browser. So the Chrome browser is free. And this Gemini sidebar is going to be free to all users of Chrome. So you don't have to pay for a special browser like Comet with a subscription. You don't even have to pay for a subscription to Gemini. As long as you're a user of Chrome, this is like moving toward a unified system where Google is going to have all of the same tools that many other players have, diligently built. It's all going to be aggregated in there. And so I think that this is an important step to watch, because Google, while it's arguable that it's losing one of the major sources of revenue, which is ad revenue, it's also in a superior position to most of the competition to get the role of being your AI assistant, at least in the computing space, like where you're on your desktop using Chrome or on your mobile device using Chrome. And many people, even iOS users like myself, I use Chrome as my default browser in iOS. So anyway, so there you have that. And by the way, OpenAI is also introducing in this context of powering payments on the web. OpenAI is preparing to introduce a new orders section in ChatGPT settings that will let users add their credit cards directly to ChatGPT. Again, the race is on. OpenAI wants to have your credit cards. Google wants to have your credit cards. Visa wants to have you using their platform in order to, instrument your agents' actions on the web. And who sees where it will fall out? I'm betting on Google. I believe Google is doing an amazing spread across the range of all of the things that you need to do with AI. And by the way, I don't use it that frequently. I use AI Studio. So when I'm on my desktop, I use AI Studio because I really like Gemini 2.5 Pro and the way it works with me. I also use Claude, and I also use ChatGPT. I've got like legs back into ChatGPT because of all the projects that I built in there, the custom GPTs. But further to Google's advancements here, Google has things called gems, which are like custom GPTs, and they've just made them shareable. Previously, you could build a gem, which is an automation and also instructions and files all built into the gem like a custom GPT, but you couldn't share it as you can custom GPT. I can give you access to a custom GPT so you can use this sort of AI assistant that I've built that has special knowledge and special tools. Now, gems can do that. I can give a gem out. I can use it collaboratively with my family, and I can use that collaboratively with my workmates like you. If I build a gem, I can give you access to that gem, and you can use that. So I'm able to articulate an AI functionality that I can then pass over to someone else. And so Google's added that as well. So those two big things, three things actually: the agent, payments protocol, Gemini in the Chrome browser for free, and gems sharing on the sort of baby step towards use of AI as a computing platform and a shareable coding system for you. All of those things give me a lot of, I have to give kudos to Google. They're really showing up in a big way. And the one limitation that I have is my time. I find it very difficult to spend enough time in the Google system to really kind of pull it all together and use it the way that they have architected.
The one thing that makes me hesitate about Google, though, in terms of I guess specifically for the gems and sharing and that kind of stuff, but in comparing it to ChatGPT, is in Google's AI Studio, you have the ability to fork the conversation, right? So you could stop conversation here and then have multiple forks that you can go and edit and see. And ChatGPT has that in, this is 1 of 2, this is 2 of 2, this is 3 of 2, as you're looking at the ways that you've changed that. In Gemini, you can't do that. You can go and edit the conversation, same as you can you can edit what you said, you can edit your prompt basically, and you can do that in Perplexity as well, what you've overwritten, what you wrote. And you can't go back and find the thread of the thing. And if any of these systems had export my whole thread, right? I want to copy and paste every section that I did. We all know that I have done this big chain. Just export it for me. I would be happy to then overwrite or interrupt something in the middle. But that's one of the things that keeps me tethered to custom GPTs and ChatGPT.
So you're saying that GEMS doesn't retain the chat history if you make an edit to a prompt?
If I make an edit to the conversation happening within the thread, so if I go back to the instructions to the gem, it doesn't change my chat history. But I have, let's say I have a news aggregator for myself for our news shows. I don't need to rewrite that each time. I just need to go back and edit the date that I want it to look at, and then it has the same instructions. I do that in one single conversation that has multiple versions, right? I don't do that in multiple
sessions. You have to start a new session. You're saying you can do that in your custom GPT?
I can do that in my conversation in ChatGPT. Yeah, I can go in and edit.
You're saying in Gem you can't do this. I haven't used Gem, so I'm really curious about this.
It's in Gemini as a whole. It's in Gemini as a whole. In AI Studio, you can you go and you edit, and it says you want to fork this conversation. Yes, I want to fork it, which means I want to create a new tree off it. A new fork, technically, because that's why it's asking me that. And ChatGPT doesn't ask you that specific question, but when you edit it, it doesn't overwrite what you edited. It automatically forks it, and then you're looking at the two. You're looking at 2 of 2, 1 of 2, and 2 of 2, and you can do that in all kinds of places, and it's so helpful for iteration. Right.
Side note, and ChatGPT recently added branching, which is essentially a fork.
Nice.
So you can continue the conversation in a separate instance.
Yeah, I'll just say that in AI Studio, I've not run into that issue just by the idiosyncrasy of the way I'm using it. But the 1 million context window makes it so that I can continue and go off on different tangents and subjects, and it retains all of that. And
right.
so the 1 million context window in Gemini makes it so I don't have the need really to do that forking separation.
Well, so we can get off this, but the context in which I'm using it, I don't want it to retain it. It went in a wrong direction for me, but I don't want to lose everything about that. I want to be able to iterate, right? Give it a slightly different instruction, emphasize something else. One of the things that I do this with is very specifically, I am putting the square graphic in a slide that already has text. Even though we're having a text conversation, don't put any text on my square thumbnail graphic. Thank you very much. I'm doing that in a different system. So when I am having that conversation, the way that needs to get phrased works for a little while, then doesn't work again. I prefer the way that Gemini actually generates images, but I prefer the way that ChatGPT follows the instructions better in that context. That's just one of my use cases.
Yeah, before we move on to anything else really quick, I did want to address, I wanted to answer. Hey, Greg, I mean, unless you noticed this change this morning, they moved it. It's in the triple dots in the upper right corner now. I know it threw me off as well for the instructions. It's still there, just in a slightly different place. I've been using projects a lot more once they allow you to create a project with a separate memory space, because the way I use ChatGPT is pretty eclectic. I ask it all kinds of questions, work, personal, all kinds of weird things, and all of that gets muddled into the memory and searching for things and whatnot. So I like being able to create a project that only relies on the chats that I have in the project, and then I can talk about that one specific thing, and it'll search from that. So that's been kind of my my deep dive lately. It helps me organize any particular thought, and then the instructions, while limited to only 8,000 characters, it does allow me to give some either guardrails or directionality and things like that. And using that ChatGPT or GPT-5 optimizer has really helped in being able to hone in what kind of responses and output that I want to use from those projects.
Cool.
There's
Karl,
one
did you have something?
story. Yes, I do. There's one story that kind of close to me because I used to work there. So Figure announced their partnership with Brookfield, and who owns like over 100,000 residential units. So essentially Figure, one of the things that they're talking about is while large language models has the training data, can use the corpus, internet and so on for training data, robots don't really have like places they can go for training data to do things. So what they're doing is using with Brookfield, be able to train on collected data in the real world, including Brookfield residential units. So whether it's office, whether it's residential, whether it's mixed use, essentially what they have is robots going through these residential enclosures to learn how to do all these different activities, navigate in these spaces. So it's kind of neat because essentially I want to show you what they're doing. Actually, I thought that was kind of neat. Let's see here. So as you can see, you have the robots going through and navigating, like this would be a typical show, I guess a showroom or a show, because Brookfield also has like show units and show homes. I just thought it's kind of neat to have essentially humans going through these places and then having the robots train on them. So I thought it was a really neat, just discovering how they're training the robots to go through, and Brookfield asset management itself is it's so massive with their properties that the training set is gonna be amazing. Yeah.
Also, when do we expect it to be an appliance? When will be a robot in your apartment that you sign up for will be the same thing as a washer, dryer, dishwasher, refrigerator, all those kinds of things?
I sent my Brookfield friends and I was like, hey, so when will your show homes be built by robots, and B, when will we have, so when you go into show homes or sales centers that look like show homes, usually have the two salespeople, but then you also have like the junior person is the I guess I forgot the term. Essentially, it's someone who greets them, right? So you have those three, and usually a combination in most Brookfield show homes have that. So it's kind of neat to be like, in addition to that, then you have the robot to like do stuff. I thought that'd be kind of neat because I can see Brookfield doing that as like the piece. Because I remember how many years ago they were the first ones to do the smart. They had like signs like, oh, test our smart system. It wasn't very smart. It was terrible. But I can just see them placing figure robots first as a kind of a novelty. But I can see if figure does it well, this thing could be essentially just walking around the house as if it's a real person. And I think just adds to the, it'll draw people to go to the show homes. And then, that's where salespeople and so on will try to close.
Like doing the whole cookie thing in the oven, the vanilla.
Doing regular activities. It's like, oh, ignore a robot. And then if they can make it actually converse, but it'll probably be just, I can literally see Brookfield doing this by placing them in the show homes and just walking up and down the stairs as if it's just another person, and it's more of the draw, and that'll be
right. And Boston Dynamics had that, right? The dog robot,
yes.
Right? The dog comedic greeter kind of thing for, I think, similar reasons, right?
It is, but like when you have I think when you have the reach of Brookfield and you have that backing it, it's like you have even more, like they can deploy it in so many places now. I can see that too.
So you're sharing the information as if it's training on their advisors and then the robot moving through. When you first said it, I was like, holy crap, is this, are people just being videoed in their space? Because that's also a huge training. And my head was like, would you pay less rent? Right? Would you have your rent subsidized if something could video you and train a system? Because that is a huge, housing is hard, right? Housing costs are hard, and that kind of data source, that's where I thought you were going, Karl.
I want to just,
kind of interesting.
I want to envision
That is not the
something.
story that Karl said. Let's just
I
be
want to
clear.
envision something here, which I think threads off what your point is that I want a robot. I want to buy a robot that can take the feed from my wearable glasses, audio and video, and just observe me for a week. And then start to offer, okay, Andy, this is the time this morning when you would normally do this. Would you like me to do that for you? So it's training on my actual behaviors in my space. So it knows. One of the things I worry about is, like, you see this beautiful wide open space in the Brookfield demonstration space, right? Where robots are, following in effect the pattern that was established by human models who were wearing glasses, like visors to train, what you do in that space. Well, most apartments, for example, don't have that much space. My home doesn't have that much space. I don't want a big ass robot wandering around in the space and getting in my way, right? So I'm thinking much smaller than the full size humanoid robots. I think that's an issue. But setting that aside, I like the idea of AI having visibility into what my particular space is and what my actions are in that space, and then augmenting my actions in those space to take over some of the things that I may not want to do. I would prefer to go on to something else. And specifically, I'm thinking about taking out the recycling, Karl. But I want to show it how I do that, right? Because there's certain rules, like you can't use a plastic bag and throw the plastic bag in the recycling bin. Here in the United States, you have to empty all the things out of it. There's no plastic bags allowed here. Anyway, that's an aside. I think I want to finalize the show here in just a few minutes, but I have one other thing I want to talk about. Before I leave the whole idea of robotics, I want to emphasize that people in the investment community do believe, there are some people in the investment community who do believe that robots will be the next largest investment in capital equipment in personal households for the future. That there will be humanoid robots and other types of robots that people will invest in, just as we've invested in our cars in this era, right? In this fossil fuel era, we built cars for everybody in the world. Well, we may not need as many cars anymore because we'll have more efficient means of collective transportation. And instead, the big capital expenditure for the household will be the robots that serve you in your houses. So I think that there is a huge transformation there, and the major players have a very bright future if they can solve some of the sort of a societal resistance to the inclusion of robots in our society. Shifting gears now, the weave is that NVIDIA is building the onboard computing platform for robots, right? The Jetson Thor is the computing system that will go into many of these robots. But now NVIDIA just this week made a $5 billion acquisition of a 4% interest in Intel. Why is this important? It's not just that they're betting on the value of Intel. What they're building is a partnership that's focused on creating a GPU plus CPU, which is what Intel builds, GPU plus CPU system on a chip. They're going to design an Intel chip that has RTX NVIDIA GPU built in with memory management between the CPU and the GPU so that you have a unified system. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, it's challenging AMD's already existing product plans for this combination of CPU and GPU on a single chip. And what this will do is it will allow Intel to build these new x86 basis CPUs with RTX system on chip combination that then will allow for seamless memory sharing this is uniform memory access across the CPU and the GPU. This dramatically will improve the efficiency of a compute system for AI and for robotics. Okay, so that also then challenges AMD's, incursion into NVIDIA's space, by NVIDIA combining in effect at a small scale now, but who knows? Eventually, maybe NVIDIA acquires or merges with Intel. That's a possibility if that becomes the main platform for this sort of efficient approach to this system on a chip vision of the architecture for AI in the future. All right, any comments about that one?
Definitely.
I thought NVIDIA invests in I swear I've seen it somewhere. NVIDIA invests in AMD too. It's not like
they might be multiplying.
The big takeaway here for me is Intel, while much lower on the tier, is one of 3 foundry systems. All the chips in the world are made by TSMC, Intel, and I believe the third one is Samsung. That's it. The entire
they're now Chinese. They're now Chinese.
Right,
fabs,
right. You're true. That's right. I think HTSC or Huawei. I think Huawei is the Chinese one. But that was it for the longest time, is just the 3. So, and Intel's been having some woes over the last decade or so. But this is a huge and great move for NVIDIA because it does secure foundry access for them. And they are definitely doubling down into the basic tools to run all of the compute. So that was my big takeaway. It's like, yes, okay, well, that makes sense. The fact that they're designing new chips, that makes sense. And they're doing it with Intel so that they have access to the foundry. They already went into that deal for something like 10% with the US government so that they could make sure to get all the funds to finish out, I believe it was their Ohio plant plan that's been going on for quite a few years, to put Intel into a position to secure that foundry status.
Yeah. And let's remember that TSMC and most of their production is done on the island of Taiwan. And it's become increasingly clear that China can strangle Taiwan anytime it wants to. This would cause a necessary reaction from the United States to defend its partner, Taiwan, in that respect. But I just don't think that that's a winning proposition. I think that most of the strategic plans for foundries are trying to get off the island.
I agree.
Well, isn't I was watching this I was watching the CBC, like our CBC special on how China has they've reduced their reliance on fossil fuels because it's mostly imported. So that's their whole EV revolution, and how, government subsidies and so on. And this is why in Canada, there's 100% tariff on any Chinese EV because it's government supported and it can essentially undercut. But at the same time too, I'm like, I don't know if you've ever seen some of the BD commercials. You're like,
I want one.
You want one of those, right?
Yeah.
But I thought, like, in the same special, if China tried to take over Taiwan, the reaction could be that the United States would. There's this strait, I can't remember, the South China Sea, where all shipping goes through a certain place, and if the Americans can block that off, that would really cripple, but then it would be kind of like an act of war kind of deal. So it's like they're kind of at a stalemate. So like, what do you do, what you don't do kind of stuff. And it's kind of it's interesting. Although I don't know if you've seen a lot of people who have gone to, showing videos about what it looks like in China, what the country looks like, and so on. It's very interesting the news you get versus on ground. And I don't know, like, you know, what's true, what's not, what are they doing, but it's like, it's just neat to like, oh, that's very interesting that you can do this, how life looks like versus what is displayed, you know, what the reporting is on you know, versus certain countries, what's actually, when people go there, there was like, oh, this is oh, okay, that's very interesting. And I would recommend, I know my dad's been there multiple times, like if you have a chance, just go there, take a trip, because it's a little different than what you assume that it is.
Yeah, just a quick mention before we close that that came from the chat actually, but China has also arrived at an agreement to sell TikTok. So, you know, and they're selling it to effectively to Larry Ellison, the, you know, the formerly richest man on the planet for about 24 hours when Oracle's stock price rocketed in response to the OpenAI announcement that they were working on a $300 billion placement of compute or inference compute purchases with Oracle. So anyway, putting TikTok, one of the major sources of information, into the hands of, you know, the sort of the MAGA universe, that's going to be owned by Oracle in effect, and some other players. I think there's some other, you know, big money. Andreessen, I think, is involved in the deal as well. So basically, MAGA supporters are now acquiring TikTok, and you can imagine that that may have some influence over the kind of postings that can be hosted there safely. And so that's another show. That's a total other discussion and a rat hole we could go down. But that sale was architected by Donald Trump, and he's putting that major asset into the hands of, you know, his supporters. And then, you know, what happens with, and what did China get out of that? It's not clear, but I think China is less and less reliant on anything sourced from the U.S. And you know, the tide has turned. China is really now leading the way in energy self-sufficiency, in AI, open source AI certainly, and then importantly in electric vehicles and other things, including robotics. So, you know, will Tesla, as an American company, be the real purveyor of robotics for the world, or will Unitree and the other Chinese companies that are advancing robotics be? So there we are. Those are the subjects we discussed today. Go ahead, Beth.
I just want to swing back quickly to the interview that I was talking about, the Axios interview of Dario Amodei, because one of the things that he's asked about is the removal of the embargo to sell chips to China. And in his answer, he references that he thinks China is ahead of the US in everything but chips, right? Energy production, listed the whole, like the open source training in a smaller period of time, like all of those things, said that chips are where the US is ahead. So this is very interesting, interesting news as well. And part of my question is, I'm curious what the new chip is. Is it the light-based communication, which is one of the things that we've talked about in like science advances and news and that kind of stuff. But yeah.
So another point before we go, and we have gone over time here, but I think it's interesting. We enjoy the conversation among the crew here at DAS and with our chat, contributions as well. We enjoy it as much as anyone, and we're not trying to restrict the time on it. Today, I just wanted to mention also that I recently attended my 50th college reunion, and I was, one of the guests at the, commencement ceremonies. And I was glancing through the book yesterday of which lists all of the candidates for all of the degrees as they go through commencement. And there's, like many pages, a couple thousand in the undergraduate space. But I paid special attention to the College of Engineering there, the Thayer School of Engineering, and also Tuck, the business school. And I was scanning through the names of the candidates for MBA and the candidates for masters and PhDs in engineering. And the majority of the names, large majority, were Chinese surnames. What does that mean? Are those all Chinese Americans? I don't think so. Though we're educating China. Apple educated China. And now China, like the AI that we've trained, is superseding the capabilities of what we've given them as the seed for how to move forward into the future. Not that we shouldn't have done that, but what we shouldn't have done is created an environment where the Chinese don't feel welcome in the United States anymore. So
you're welcome in Canada.
Yeah, they're going to go to Canada next.
Oh, in terms of TikTok too, by the way, I'd be very curious once this deal gets happened, because it's just it's not North American, it's just US TikTok. So I think in Canada we'll still get regular TikTok, because you'll get the weird new algorithm. I don't know what that looks like. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I want to see what American TikTok looks like versus Canadian TikTok, or the world TikTok and American TikTok. And because I was reading, it's like there's a brand new algorithm. It's not taken from regular TikTok, which I'm worried that the algorithm that is in American isn't going to be as good as the TikTok one, which really seems to has a really good feel of what you want, which I kind of like TikTok because of that. So I'm curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah. Scary. All right. Thanks for joining us today. That's the end of the Daily AI Show for Friday, September 19th. Join us again on Monday. I'm responsible for the subject of that show, so I'm not going to reveal it yet because I haven't determined what it is. But it's going to be good. Trust me, I will spend some time this weekend on making sure that it's going to be a good show on Monday. Come back and join us live on YouTube, where you can join the chat and sign up for our newsletter. It'll come out Sunday morning. It's a nice digest of what you need to know about AI, and that's at thedailyAIshow.com. And join the community of users of all of these assets that we create every week and every day. And that's at thedailyAIshowcommunity.com. All right. Thanks again. Jyunmi, send us.
Aloha.